So this is my Discover German week one or week 8 cultural presentation, and I'm doing it on cultural tourism with my theme being German Romanticism. My figure is Beethoven. My city is Vienna. So I'll go off with Beethoven's role in the German Romanticism movement. So Beethoven was a very famous composer, and he was born in Vienna. And his role in the Romantic era was essentially moving from more classical music to more romantic music that had a more focus on emotions, like heavy emotions, sadness, joy, and intense depth, and individualism. And also another key thing that was in the Romanticism movement was heroism, heroicism. And he definitely showed that in his symphonies 2 through 8. And also a reason why Beethoven was very pivotal in the German Romanticism movement was his fellow composers. Brahms, Wagner, and Berlioz had a lot of influence on them, and that caused them to have an even bigger impact on the Romanticism movement. So I'm going to move on to Vienna and German Romanticism. And at the end of this, I'm going to show a Google Earth of 2 locations I've personally visited in Vienna and why they were important to this movement. So Vienna was a music hub, very obviously. It housed Beethoven and Schubert. And Beethoven, as I spoke, was very important in this movement through his art. And also, it had intellectual hub too, as a lot of Joseph Haydn, Franz Grillparzer, and Johann Joseph von Gordes contributed to the movement. There was many others, but a lot of this intellectual growth occurred in coffee houses and opera houses and saloons and places where people would gather and talk about creative ideas and novel ideas and ones that really went against the past. And these thoughts had a huge impact on the rest of the German speaking world, especially Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg, which was Baden-Württemberg back then, but and a few other ones. But so I'll now show off the Vienna Opera House, which I've been to, and this is where Beethoven played a lot of his symphonies. It's a very pretty, gorgeous building. Also, the Emperor of Austria frequently visited here during this time period. And this is the Schönbrunn Palace in Austria. This is where the Habsburg monarchy would live, and this is actually a picture of the gate to the Hofburg Palace, or somewhere over there. And that was heavily influenced by the architecture of the time, which really had Gothic influence or emphasis because of the Romanticism movement wanted an older, more medieval architecture style in its remembrance of the past. So I'll move on to German Romanticism. So essentially, the German Romanticism movement was a cultural, intellectual movement that started around the 1800s and ended in the 1900s, or before the 1900s. But it was essentially a fierce opposition against the Industrial Revolution, which was moving off of simpler times to more complex times, and a lot of people were losing jobs, and it was a very sad time period for a lot of people. So they put more of an emphasis on individuals' feelings and emotions and nature and the individual, and kind of rejected rationalism that was in the Enlightenment. And a lot of German nationalism actually was provoked by this, which ended up leading to the German nation, actually, because of the celebration of their whole history and culture. And it also led to romanticizing, an actual romanticizing of the medieval period, which you can see in the architecture from that time. It was more medieval, and it was a line for a simpler past. So my interest in romanticism, specifically German romanticism, it's a big difference from today, modern times, and rationalism. And rationalism was also a harsh critic of capitalism. A lot of this due to its industrial revolution roots. And I think this is interesting as it's had more goals to fulfill oneself instead of goals to fulfill one's monetary and physical goals. And also, I think it's very interesting in the historical context as a huge influence in the not only the Austrian Empire's collapse, but also the formation of the German Empire. And all those things have huge relevance in modern, well, Germany as a country existing, nature, because we have climate issues, and this movement had a heavy influence on the climate. So I'm done with this presentation. Now I'll move on to the online skit, which I did. I actually recorded all these, but they don't play well enough, so I'm gonna just say them instead. Me and Don worked on this last week, the script for it, but I created the presentation. I'm going to say the words again. So I'll start now. Kultur, Kultur. Interessierst du dich auch für das wirkliche Leben? Ja, schon, sogar sehr. John und Christina, wir werden heute Abend eine Party. Wollt ihr kommen? Natürlich. John und Christina sind hier. Hallo, wie geht es dir? Möchte einer von euch etwas trinken? Hol mir bitte ein Glas Wasser. Ich möchte nichts trinken. Hier ist dein Glas Wasser. Danke. Was hast du wohl hier gemacht? Ich war in der Mensa. Ich war auch da. Es war ein gutes Mittagessen. Ich war auch da. Natürlich war es da. Ich habe dir meinen Nachttisch gegeben. Oh ja, dein Nachttisch war super gut. Super gut. Wollen wir Fußball spielen? Lass uns Fußball spielen. Okay, was sind die Teams? Thomas und ich gegen euch drei. Allerdings mochte ich nicht als Sturm spielen. Guter Versuch, Thomas und John. Ja, es war ein gutes Spiel. Das hat trotzdem Spaß gemacht. Okay, that's the end of my presentation, and I'll end it off here. Here's the sources. Bye-bye.